Hey friends, welcome back to Essence Homestead. I am Abby. We are out in our little cattle panel greenhouse that is nice and warm. We still have some snow outside, but spring is coming. I've been trying to decide how to do some of these videos so I can take you guys along on our journey to growing as much of our own food as we possibly can. So I've just decided I'm just going to take you along with me day to day and you can see what we have going on. We've got some major work to get done here in the greenhouse with our seedlings, and I will explain some things as we go. We are going to start out giving some of our onions and leeks a haircut. If you look at this pot of onions, they're a little bit more sturdy, and that's because these were inside and I was doing a better job of getting them regular haircuts. As these plants get larger or longer, they will start to drop down and touch the soil. When they touch the soil, a lot of the times they will die. So we like to trim them up and they get stronger and stronger. So I just go through with the scissors and snip the long ends and try to pick them up off of the soil. So if you're new to our channel, we are in western Wisconsin. We are zone 4. Some winters I usually try to prepare our gardens for a zone 3, but this year was actually quite mild. So for onions in our area, you need to make sure that you're planting long day onions. Onions naturally will start to bulb when daylight hours hit a certain length. And so depending on where if you're farther north, you have longer summer days and you need to have long day onions. So I'm not sure where in the United States that line really is. So be aware when you are buying seeds in the early spring, winter, that you are getting long day onions for Wisconsin. I hope you can keep up today. We seriously have a ton of work to do. Next up, we've got a bunch of tomatoes to pot up. They probably should have been done a while ago. They've had true leaves for a while and they're kind of stunted in the little cell trays that they're in right now. So let's see what varieties we're doing. So when I start seeds in these trays, I usually just throw some tape on the side to show what varieties they are. We've got that Brad's Atomic Grape, large red cherry, and some sweetie cherry, which are my absolute favorite tomatoes. So I will be potting these up into 4-inch trays. The potting soil that I am using is the Organic Pro Mix, just because that's what I like and have used for years. So we are going to get these going. I'm going to show you how deep you can bury your tomatoes. So here I probably had some kids helping pot these, so there's 2 to 1 cell. If you're careful, you can separate them without damaging them. Now if you look closely at this, you can maybe see that there's all these little hairs along the stem. These little hairs, if buried down into the soil, will turn into roots. So with tomatoes, we like to bury them as deep as we can. So here, very carefully, I'm just going to pull these apart and we'll do one at a time. Now what I like to do is pinch off these first little leaves that come up when your tomatoes first sprout. These are the first leaves. These are called true leaves, so these are the actual leaves that this tomato will grow throughout the season. So now I'm going to pot this deep down into these 4-inch pots, and I'm going to bury it so that the dirt is almost up to where these next set of leaves come up, as deep as I can without completely burying the plant. Not today, Karen. These are my plants. Nope. You're not playing in here today, chicken. You're a hot mess. Grow some feathers back. So they are gonna look something like this when they are potted up. Now you might think, oh gosh, this is a tiny little seedling. This is never gonna grow tomatoes, but believe me, they love being potted up like this and they will take right off. There's about 100 over here that I potted up a week and 2 weeks ago. And they are happy. Ellen, you're not coming in here either. So I just wanted to explain that you can be careful with your seedlings, but they're actually tougher than they look, especially tomato seedlings. Every day I usually kind of rub my hands over the tray of tomatoes as they're growing, and I keep a fan on them, and we generally keep the door open on our greenhouse so that there's a slight breeze. Now, the more that your tomatoes get moved around and jostled a bit, the stronger the stems will grow, and that's what you need when you are first transplanting your seedlings out into the garden. If you have seedlings that are started inside, even if you harden them off to the sunshine and they're in too protected of an area where they're not getting any wind, as soon as you plant them out into the field or garden, the wind is just going to destroy the weak stems. So don't be too careful with your seedlings. Then we're going to water the heck out of them, and they're going to look really sad, but don't worry, they're just fine. Thanks to my chickens, I have to do this system of blocking the door so they don't come in here and eat everything. This is apparently scary enough that a chicken will not go through a door. Let's go. You ready? I think about weekly, I've been asked, I don't know, a dozen times by different people, what we start early. I could go through the list and say peppers, leeks, onions, Swiss chard, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, broccoli, more cabbage, more peppers, cauliflower, peppers, eggplant. I could go through tomatoes, more peppers, all kinds of herbs. I could go through that entire list with you, but frankly, it is much easier in Wisconsin to explain what you can wait and direct sow and plant directly in the garden without starting in a container early in the season. Okay, the first thing I never start inside is potatoes. We have seed potatoes and we generally save different varieties year to year. This year we actually ran a little bit low on potatoes, so I actually bought 5-pound bags of seed potatoes, and we had plenty of blue potatoes. So potatoes go directly into the soil. If you are growing for the first time this year and you have saved some regular store-bought potatoes, I would recommend growing them in pots just because they can carry different diseases that you really don't want to spread through your soil. The next thing that I never start early is corn. Corn always goes directly out into the garden in the springtime as soon as you can really work the soil. We had false spring last week and 2 weeks ago, and I could have planted then, but I knew we were getting some cold weather. So now I would say it may actually be spring. Don't say that too loud in Wisconsin. But corn can go directly out into the garden. If you've ever grown it inside on accident thinking you should start it ahead of time, you'll realize how quickly it grows and that it takes over and does not like to be transplanted. Another quick grower that doesn't like to be transplanted that I put directly in the garden in the spring is sunflowers. Now, I've tried starting them inside before just so I could have blooms early, and they really just thrive directly in the garden if you are planting seeds directly. When you are transplanting, they generally do not have the strongest stems from being kept inside or in a greenhouse that's covered, and so they get wind whipped very easily. Another thing that I do not start inside is beans. We grow a huge variety of different snap beans and dry beans, and I always plant them directly out in the garden in the spring. They're another fast grower that's easy to get wind whipped, that are a little bit harder to transplant. So I just like planting them right in the garden, and I don't like to waste space in the greenhouse for something like that. Another thing about beans that I've realized is planting later, you get much better yields. Finally, the last things that I refuse to start inside in seed trays or containers or anything like that is any root crops. Carrots, beets, radishes, parsnips, anything like that I plant directly out into the soil. Carrots especially do not like root disturbance, and so if you start them in even a seed tray, and try to be careful, a lot of times you will get really wonky looking carrots because they do not like to be moved once they've germinated. I just thought of one last crop that I know a lot of people in Wisconsin direct sow the seeds in the soil in the spring instead of starting inside, and that is pumpkins. Now, I have not had very good luck with that, so I actually start my pumpkins about 2 to 3 weeks early inside the greenhouse, and then I transplant them out. My issue is mice. Every time I have ever sown pumpkin seeds directly in the soil, I have had 0 pumpkins, and that is because mice go through and eat all of the seed. So maybe you don't have as big of a mouse problem as I do, and that would work perfect. You can direct sow those straight out into your garden. So I hope that this is helpful. Thank you for joining us today. We still have a little bit more work to do here in the greenhouse, and then we are going to go play. Sure, one time.